All right, welcome to another edition of Buck What You Heard. My name is Gene. You can reach me at Super Heavyweight on Twitter, and you can see my Twitter handle here under the title of the show, Buck What You Heard. I'm joined by my guest. One of my favorite guests to have on is Peter Blake. And Peter, tell everybody how they can get a hold of you and what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at pblake1003. Also, you can find my show, The Sports Web, on WTAN 1340 AM, Saturday afternoons from 4 to 5. Bring your passion, bring your excitement. Just don't bring any nonsense. If you're listening online, tantalk1340.com. Again, that's Saturday afternoon from 4 to 5. And, of course, we talked about this a little last week. There's going to be a one-year anniversary show right before the draft. It's going to be 2 hours, so definitely pay attention to that.
All right, man. It's crazy. We're in the off season, and there's so much stuff going on with the NFL. It's exciting, and I mean, I was excited for the schedule. That was the big thing that I was really looking for. And then I pick up my phone this morning, and I see the Rams have made a deal with the Tennessee Titans. You want to talk a little bit about that? And I feel bad for the fans. Any fans that are keeping track of the draft and they have their little draft sheet, if they were doing the tournament and they had their tournament bracket and they had to tear that up, they're going to have to tear up their draft sheet too, because the Rams have wrecked everything for everybody basically.
Yeah, and right now I think the wheels are turning in a lot of fans' heads because you don't know now what the Titans are going to do. They moved down to 15. They were a 3-13 team. The way they're looking at it, they believe Laramie Tunsil might be as good as Ronnie Stanley. He may be as good as Jake Conklin. So they moved down. They feel like they have a lot of needs to address. The Rams, they felt like they've drafted so well with both of their lines being pretty solid, having some talent, having Todd Gurley as the running back. But the problem with the Los Angeles Rams, I almost said St. Louis, is they don't have a quarterback. They have Case Keenum. And besides the Buccaneers giving up 70% to this player, he's a average to mediocre to awful quarterback. So they feel like Carson Wentz or Jared Goff will be the selection. And it's going to be interesting. And they actually gave up less than what they got in return for the RG3 trade from the Washington Redskins. So I think both teams made out in this deal. The thing that I look at is Carson Wentz, Jared Goff. Are they compared to the quarterbacks last year and Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota? I wouldn't think so. I really don't think they're that good. But the Rams right now feel like they're only one player away, and that could be Wentz or Goff.
Yeah, and they really rolled the dice. I think they doubled down on this move. The division that they are in, where you have the Seattle Seahawks, the Arizona Cardinals, and the San Francisco 49ers, who now coached by Chip Kelly, you are looking at a team that has to do something. They moved to Los Angeles. We know how Los Angeles fans are. If you're not winning, you're out the door. Me personally, I've never been a big fan of Fisher. I've always thought he was a subpar coach. I didn't
Four
like
losing
him.
seasons with the
Yeah,
Rams, so he has to do something.
right.
He's the first coach that's been brought back after 4 losing seasons since, I believe, David Shula of the Bengals, and he didn't do well. So Jeff Fisher right now has to win. It's a desperation move, but I believe that the Rams feel like Wentz and Goff are the guys. And just chew on this. Let me give you something to think about, okay? How about this? Will history repeat itself? Will the Los Angeles Rams draft a quarterback that's most likely more pro-ready to come in right away and Jared Goff, who went to California? Or will they draft the guy that has the most potential in Carson Wentz out of North Dakota State? Now, how history repeats itself is this. The San Francisco 49ers had the number 1 pick. They decided to go with the potential in Alex Smith over the local guy in Aaron Rodgers, and the rest is history. So that's something to watch during this draft.
Yeah, there are so many sub stories with the draft, and I'm really I guess last year's draft took a lot out of me. I mean, with all the back and forth, the he said, she said, all the just scrutiny on Jameis Winston, and
Right.
you saw. I mean, I don't know about you, but it was so frustrating
I
just
loved it.
having to go through it. And to me, I think the draft should be about, you look at the game film, you watch the combines kind of verify some of the things you may have said thought you saw in the game film, but it's not the end all be all. And then you have the pro day, which is the interview. So I mean, the process has changed. It's become all bright lights, and it's all about the money now. And the process is a lot different. But this year's draft, I don't know who the Bucks are looking at now. I know last week I mentioned Hargraves, I've mentioned DeForest Buckner, I've mentioned Noah Spence, I've mentioned a lot of different people that Tampa could potentially be looking at bringing into one Buck. But at the end of the day, we won't know until draft day who they're going to get. But it's kind of fun to speculate. And, I just, right now I don't know. And with this, what just happened today with the Rams, I really don't know. So let's kind of do a rundown, because I know you're going to have to reshuffle your draft board. So I'm gonna hand this over to you for a second, and let's see what you've done with your draft board, knowing that the Rams have made these moves.
Well, I think it's made it more interesting for a team like the Rams and for the Cleveland Browns, because whomever the Rams like in their draft, that's who most likely the Browns are going to have to settle for. So I think Carson Wentz goes number one. I think the potential wins out. I think there's some scouts that believe he's ready to come in and play right away. I'm not so sure about that, but we'll see. I think Jared Goff from California goes number two, because I can't believe that the Browns would depend on RG3 to make it through a full season. He's not the future for them. He may have been the future for the Washington Redskins a couple years back. I don't believe he is, so that's why I think they take Jared Goff. I think the San Diego Chargers are going to have a decision to make. Would they take Laramie Tunsil to protect Phillip Rivers, or would they take possibly the best player in this draft than Jalen Ramsey? I'm going to go with Jalen Ramsey. At number 4, I go with the surprise here. Everybody's been talking about Joey Bosa. I don't think Joey Bosa goes here. In fact, I think it's the other Ohio State Buckeye. I go with Ezekiel Elliott. At number 5, I go with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I go with Miles Jack. At number 6, I go with the Baltimore Ravens. And even though they most likely have a need for a defensive player, I think that defensive player may be DeForest Buckner. But do not be surprised if they take an offensive lineman and a Laramie Tunsil. So maybe a Laramie Tunsil there instead of a DeForest Buckner. At number 7, you could definitely go with an offensive lineman and Ronnie Stanley. There's not a quarterback on the board, so right now I would have to go with maybe a Ronnie Stanley for the San Francisco 49ers, or maybe a DeForest Buckner, because they have defensive needs. At number 8, what did the Philadelphia Eagles? From what I've heard, they're very interested in Vernon Hargreaves, so I go with number 8, Vernon Hargreaves. And at number 9, the Buccaneers get Joey Bosa. I truly believe the reason why Joey Bosa is drafting is because of his statistics last year. His stats fell down. His sacks fell down. His slow 40 time. But the thing that I like about Joey Bosa, maybe he's not a J.J. Watt, because a J.J. Watt only comes around in a generation. Maybe he's not a Von Miller, but what he is he's a top player. He's a good player. He could turn into a great player, because you have Jay Hayes, who's the defensive line coach, who, by the way, got production out of Michael Johnson. We all know about Mr. Johnson when he came down here with Tampa.
The ghost.
So
the ghost.
I say, right, the ghost. I say Joey Bosa, number 9 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I believe that the Buccaneers come out pretty well in this draft with that pick, if that happens.
Yeah. You know what? I can't argue with any of your picks. Joey Bosa, I'm going back and forth there again. One Joey Bosa, I really do believe that there are some teams above Tampa that have a greater need on that defensive side of the ball, and if he's available, he is a safe pick based on his skill set and the skill set translating to the NFL. Now, right, based on what I've been reading and some of the research I've been doing, I've come to this conclusion, and it's going to change. It'll probably change next week too. So look out for that.
Right.
But what I'm looking at here is the greatest need for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is on that defensive line.
Agreed.
They brought back Jonathan Banks. They brought back Altron Werner, two guys that they could have easily, sent them on their way with a new defense coming in. And I really do believe that what they've done with bringing in a Brent Grimes, I think the secondary is going to be fine for now. I think the focus on that high pick is either going to be a edge rusher or they trade down for more picks. I find that kind of unlikely that they trade down, but that potential is always there. There's
Not
always some
really.
team. There's
Not
always
really.
some.
Go ahead. No, I think
Oh,
you could be right on the money here with the Buccaneers trading down, because you look at John Robinson. People say, well, this trade doesn't really affect the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's not necessarily true, because if you remember, John Robinson ran this college scouting department for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Maybe he's looking to get back up in there because he said that Taylor Lewan is his left tackle, but maybe they're trying to go and get a Ronnie Stanley if he's on the board, or Jake Conklin out of Michigan State at that 9 spot. So the Buccaneers would definitely have to listen. And look, Gene, it's a great point, because the draft is filled with all these defensive players. You have a lot of depth there. So maybe the Buccaneers do trade down at 15 and say they get a Noah Spence or a player that they didn't expect would be on the board, and you pick up a couple of second-round picks. It makes sense because, look, it's different from this year to last year. Last year, you had a franchise quarterback. They took him. That was the right move. This year, there's not really that single player that you would say, you know what, we have to get him, unless Bosa falls into your lap. Then you would be crazy to pass up on him. Because, again, he may not be a J.J. Watt, but he could be a Jared Allen. And guess what? Jared Allen wasn't a bad player in the NFL. That's going to help your defense out tremendously. So I would not rule out the possibility of the Buccaneers maybe trading back. On top of that, there's been some reports now, and just rumors, and I can't confirm these rumors, but just looking on Twitter and seeing some various reports, there was supposedly a SEC corner that failed a drug test. Now, right now, some people are saying that's Vernon Hargreaves. If that is true, if Vernon Hargreaves failed a drug test but before the combine, first of all, he's an idiot. And second of all, you stay away from him, because anytime a guy is willing to take that chance before a job interview, his biggest job interview, to do drugs, then obviously their mind is not on football. It's on something else. I would stay clear away from him. So let's see what happens. Let's see what these reports are coming out. If it's Vernon Hargreaves, if it's Vernon Hargreaves, then I think he's off your board, and I think anything is up at this point. But this trade today has kind of changed a lot of people's mock drafts, and it's kind of a good thing because you don't know. I think the Rams are going to take a quarterback. You don't trade up to the number 1 spot to take a defensive player. You trade up to take a quarterback. We believe that the Cleveland Browns are going to take a quarterback. We don't know necessarily what San Diego is going to do, but they definitely have a need at that safety position. And then after that, it's all on the table. Do I think the Buccaneers would trade up? Maybe if somebody on the board is at 6 or 7 and it doesn't cost you a lot of picks. But if, again, the best defensive player coming into this draft at the time was Bosa, and he's there at 9, you take him.
That's right. And looking at the top 10 and the top 10 picks, people that you've named off, I personally, only because Tampa already has a franchise quarterback, I can't really think of anybody other than maybe Jalen Ramsey that you trade up to get.
Yeah, no, I can't think of anyone either, honestly. I mean, unless you really feel like one of these quarterbacks, and from everything I've heard with these quarterbacks, they're not that good. They're not compared to Winston or Mariota last year. So besides Jalen Ramsey, and even Jalen Ramsey, you think about it, you're trading up for safety. Is the safety going to make that much of a difference on your team? I mean, if you're one player away, maybe. Is he a corner? What is he? Is he a corner? Is he a safety? He's a playmaker. He's a winner. He has all the attributes that you would want in a player. He's squeaky clean off the field. He's coming from a winning program. Would I trade up to give my whole draft away for him? I don't necessarily think so. So to say there's a player in this draft that I'm going to trade up for, I'm not so sure.
Yeah. So I know while we're talking about this, I really do believe that, if it is possible to make that move, if I were a general manager, I wouldn't trade down. I really would. I really would trade down. I'm not sure.
Go
unless
ahead. I'm sorry.
like you said, unless Joey Bosa falls in your lap or somebody of that caliber, that would be the move that I would make. I would trade down. So we're both on the same page on this. And after that, it's all out there for whoever wants to come up. And I'm sure there are some teams out there desperate for players, because I think Tampa did themselves a favor going into free agency and grabbing key players in key positions, which allows them a little bit more flexibility in the draft to get somebody that they can groom into a position, or a player that can fill a hole that they have on that defense or offense.
No, it's a great point. And now you wonder how Mike Glennon factors into this, because the Jets have still not signed Ryan Fitzpatrick. There was a report today from Woody Johnson that they're not even close at this point. So maybe Mike Glennon's value goes up. You talk about the San Francisco 49ers. They haven't traded Kaepernick yet, but you assume, so whoever doesn't get Kaepernick, whoever needs a quarterback, the Buccaneers are going to be on the phone. And let's just say that there's a team out there that favors Paxton Lynch, and you're at the 9 position. You would be crazy not to listen. If the Buccaneers trade down to a certain point where they feel like there's a player on the board, say a Noah Spence or a Kevin Dodd, or even a Ogaba, who they really like, but the film kind of shows a player that takes off plays. He's extremely athletic. He's fast, 4.6 speed, but is he a 9th? Right. Yeah. Is he a 9th player in the draft? I don't think so, but is he a 15, a 16, a 17, even a 20? Possibly. So it's all about value at this point. If you feel like you can trade somebody and get picks back and fill those needs, then go for it. And that's why I say maybe a Paxton Lynch. Maybe there's somebody out there, because look, NFL teams are crazy right now. The wheels are turning in their head. The Philadelphia Eagles are supposedly interested in Carson Wentz. Maybe they trade up to number 2, and then Cleveland trades down to number 8. The San Francisco 49ers still have their quarterback, but let's say they trade him to Denver, then they need a quarterback. So, or maybe Denver doesn't make that trade, so now they need a quarterback. So right now, it's all about the quarterbacks. And if those 2 quarterbacks are off the board, then the next man up could be Paxton Lynch. So let's say Paxton Lynch is there and somebody believes, that he is the quarterback for their future, and they're willing to give up those players and those picks, make the deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't argue that at all. And, once again, here we are, same team, the usual suspects in the top 10, and it's just not getting any better. So, hopefully we'll see some changing of the guard. I think that the Titans, if I had to go win or loser, I would honestly say that the Titans came out of this deal and I do believe that they have the administration to do it. I believe that they can make these picks count. They can really vault themselves over the Indianapolis Colts or any of the other teams that are in the AFC South. So I really do believe that they've done themselves a big favor making this move. And I think that we're going to see that going into the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I think the Rams, you look at them, they gave up a lot of picks, but again, they felt like they've drafted over the years. They've drafted very well. They have some players on that team. What's the one thing they're missing? What's the one thing that the Los Angeles Rams, and it's so hard to still call them the Los Angeles Rams, I want to say St. Louis, what are they missing? They're missing a quarterback. Anytime you come out to your fan base and say Case Keenum is our starter, that is not going to make me rush to the ticket booth and buy tickets. It's not.
Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right. I think you hit the nail on the head. There was a conversation I had today about this, and I really do feel like that the Rams had to do something drastic, something that says, hey, we're in Los Angeles and we're here to win. Making that move, getting a quarterback, like you said, that would be a great move to get the quarterback from Cal, get him in there. He's a guy from this region. Everybody is familiar with him. I think that would be a great fit, and I think that would be a great selling point for season ticket holders. So that would be a great move, and I think that they've done what they had to do, and I think they can put butts in the seats by doing that.
Yeah, and I think that this team, they have to win at this point because Jeff Fisher has already
Absolutely.
gone through 4 losing seasons. And again, you look at the talent on both offensive and defensive lines. The skill positions are pretty good. I mean, they've done a pretty solid job in drafting, and it was all set up from the RG3 deal. But now they're going back the other way. They need a quarterback. They believe it's Carson Wentz or it's Jared Goff. Most likely it's Carson Wentz, but who knows? It may be Jared Goff. But there's no way you trade up for number one and not take a quarterback. And right now, I think the draft boards are not as crazy as you think because we believe that both of those teams are going to take a quarterback. So both of those quarterbacks are there. Now it starts to push some of these players down that you didn't expect would be there at number 9 for the Bucs.
Absolutely. And now Cleveland has to think long and hard about what they're going to do next. Are we
Nobody
going
ever
to take?
knows what Cleveland's going to
Yeah,
do. How many
exactly.
quarterbacks have they had? 25 starting quarterbacks. They're most likely
Yeah,
going to have 26 starting quarterbacks after
yeah,
RG3 fails. So you just
yeah,
hope for Cleveland Brown fans, because I feel bad for Browns fans that they don't have a starting quarterback there and then have different quarterbacks every year. You just hope they get some continuity. You hope that Hugh Jackson is the answer to turn a quarterback into a Pro Bowler, because I really feel bad for Browns fans. I really like those guys. They're diehard people. They
yeah,
love their teams up there. They haven't had a championship in 60 years. You just hope the Browns turn it around eventually.
yeah. I'm right there with you. I really love Browns fans myself. I feel bad for them. It would be very hard for me to buy a ticket to a game with the history that they've had, even over the past 10 years. They did have a couple of teams that looked like they were going to turn the corner, and then nothing else happened. So I really do hope that they can get that worked out. So we talked a little bit about the draft. We'll touch on the draft a whole lot more coming up next week when we have a little bit more of an idea of what's going on. There
Oh,
may be
yeah.
some moves. Mike Glennon may be gone, or Mike Glennon may be here. We just don't know. But for me, this morning, the one thing that I was excited about is the schedule. Have you seen the schedule yet?
I'm looking at it right now, and I'm seeing 2 primetime games between the Carolina Panthers, which is 7 days after my birthday, which is hopefully a omen that they're going to win that game, and the Atlanta Falcons, which is also another primetime game, which is NFL Network Thursday night here. So I'm excited about it. It's a tough schedule because you open up at Atlanta and at Arizona, and they did a pretty good job sweeping Atlanta last year, but Arizona going on the road, that's a tough place to play. You come home and play the Rams, the Denver Broncos, which are the Super Bowl champions, 1 day before my birthday. Hint, hint. Tickets maybe, hopefully. At Carolina, and then you get a bye week. I mean, it's tough. It's a tough
Yeah.
schedule. I mean, you're playing the AFC West and you're playing the NFC West. I mean, there's no
Yeah.
gimmies, and then you have the NFC South. So
Right.
it's going to be a tough schedule.
And the one thing that Sean King, I was reading one of his tweets this afternoon. He said that basically he doesn't understand why people feel like one team is going to be the same from one year to the next.
Very true.
And he made a very valid point, because I look at Denver. You look at their quarterback situation. They had 2 quarterbacks, Brock Osweiler and Peyton Manning. You look at
Right.
them right now in this league. I know your defense is good. Your defense may be, I don't know, I wouldn't call them elite because I'm not a big Denver fan. I don't really have a whole lot of good to say about them.
They're elite.
But
Stop being a hater.
I am being a hater. I'm sorry. Keep Talib and the rest of them. Don't get me started. But anyway, you need a quarterback in this league. You need a quarterback. I'm sorry. You can have a monster defense, but you need some sort of quarterback that can get in this system and at least keep you from getting down too far where the defense has to do all the work. So that's important. It remains to be seen what this offense is going to look like, but it definitely will not look like it did last season. Another team to think about are the Seattle Seahawks. Marshawn Lynch, gone.
Mm-hmm.
So those are big shoes to fill. I realized that he was hurt, and they had some guys come in, and they did pretty good. I do believe they lost some offensive linemen into free agency. So this team may not look the same as they did last year. Let's see
Good
who
point.
else.
No,
Um,
it's an absolutely good point by Sean King. He's a smart guy, by the way. He knows what he's
yeah,
talking about. If you follow
yeah,
him on Twitter, he's been very accurate when talking about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He had it right
yeah,
on. He was right about a lot of the stuff that they've done and hasn't worked out. So he's a good follow
absolutely.
on Twitter. Um, but in saying that, you're exactly right. We assume that the Buccaneers are going to be the same team that they were last year offensively. I got some major questions about Vincent Jackson coming off the ACL injury. I got some major questions about Lewis Murphy, if he's going to be ready. I mean, who's your other wide receiver? Who's your other wide receivers? Are they going to
Kenny
address
Bell.
that in the draft? Right.
Yeah.
So,
Does he
but
come
you,
back? Does he come back 100%?
right, exactly. But you're looking at the schedule. I mean, it's tough. It's going to
Yeah.
be a tough. It's going to be a tough haul. I mean, you
I
go to
think I
Dallas.
think this is a good measuring stick for what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will potentially be able to do.
Sure.
And as I look through the schedule, I see 6 wins. But to be honest, I need to put that aside because we don't know what the defense is going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and the question that's lingering in every Bucs fan's mind, and I know this, you may not say it, but I know it. Was this defense run correctly? Was that the problem with this Tampa Bay Buccaneers only getting 6 wins? And everybody's asking that. Now, we don't have the old coach. We don't have the old defensive scheme. We've got a new defensive scheme who, according to Quan Alexander, is a lot more aggressive, and fans are going to like this defense a lot more than the defense they were in. So, to me, it sounds like I can't tell you if the Bucs players are saying the right things or if they genuinely feel like, hey, this defense is going to knock your socks off and you're going to really love it. So, I think they've got key players in key places. They've done really good with free agency. Let's see how they do in the draft. You get some young players in that are able to contribute like they were able to do in the last 2 drafts, which I've been very happy with this general manager's drafting abilities. I really do feel like Tampa is headed in the right direction. You have your foundation, you have a good administration, a guy that is not afraid to admit and own up to mistakes. Yeah, we got the wrong free agents in here, but we got them out of here and we've cleaned house and we're ready to move forward. That's what an NFL team needs. That kind of general manager, not some jerk that hides and you never see him say anything. He always has excuses for his mistakes. It was always somebody else's fault, never his. And
Right.
now he's on ESPN doing a horrible job because you can't believe him.
Yeah. No.
Do you really think I would take draft advice from that guy?
No, I don't. I
Exactly.
don't know why. He's great on TV, does a good job, but the things that he says, it's kind of interesting because I look back at his track record, not a great track record.
Horrible.
But in saying that, looking at the schedule, I think it could have 7 to 9 wins if they draft correctly. I think they could have 7 to 9 wins if everything comes together. I look at it this way. I think they're going to be improved just because of the coaching aspect. I think Dirk Cutter is the right man for this job. I think Mike Smith being the defensive coordinator, I think Jay Hayes coaching up the defensive line is going to help. I think this defense was a lot better. I made no mistake about it last year, ladies and gentlemen. I thought this team was a playoff team and could certainly win 10 games. It's a tough schedule. I think improvement is going to be there, and I think they could possibly win 7 to 9 games, maybe 9 games at the most. You just don't know because Jameis Winston in his second year, he's going to know this offense better. You believe that the Buccaneers are going to go into a second or third wave of free agency and put some holes to bed by going after offensive players to help him out. You believe that they're going to go into the draft and maybe get a second or third round wide receiver, maybe a Braxton Miller or Josh Doxson out of TCU. You believe that they're going to fill these holes, and you think the defense is going to be better just simply because Mike Smith has the experience in the league of coaching defenses and having a disciplined defense. And Jay Hayes gets production out of players that were here that didn't produce, that are now going to produce.
And Gerald McCoy's back to 100%.
He's 100%. Right, and you got Quan Alexander back for the whole year. So I think there's a lot of optimistic possibilities. Is it going to happen? We'll see. I've gone out there before. I've said 10 wins. I've been wrong. So what the hell do I know? But I'm looking at the schedule right now. I looked at the schedule last year. I thought it was an easy schedule. It didn't turn out to necessarily be that easy because the Buccaneers lost a lot of winnable games that they should have won. So maybe it turns around this year. Maybe some games that we don't expect them to win, they learn in their second year and they progressively get better and they're not as undisciplined. So maybe they do put 9 or 10 wins together. I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's not out of the realm of possibility. You know that saying, any given Sunday. You never know what's going to happen. They could go out there and actually win some games that nobody's expecting them to win. So I would never count Tampa out of any of these games based on what I'm seeing. I do believe that now that Jameis Winston has seen some 3-4 defenses, I think he's a little bit more comfortable. Trial by fire, I think, was really good for him. He really showed that he wants to get better. He's going into the offseason and physically getting better, and he's just putting it all together. And I really do think that this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team will be a better team than the team we saw last season, the 6-win team we saw last season. So it is possible. Some of these games, the San Francisco 49ers, that's a game where if Tampa comes in, doesn't make any mistakes, they could walk out of that game. We saw what Tampa did to a Chip Kelly football team last season with the Philadelphia Eagles. And yes, absolutely. So any given Sunday, these games are games that they have to go out and play. They have to execute the game plan that Coach Cutter has put in place for them and make sure that they're playing in their gaps and doing what they're supposed to do, playing disciplined football. And all of these games are winnable games. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, well, we got to face the Chicago Bears, we're going to lose that game. No, any of these games are winnable games. So for me, I think that Tampa is headed in the right direction. This draft, to me, is a big-time draft because this is going to tell me if Jason Light is the man. Is he that guy? Is he that draft guru, the guy that can go and assess talent, something that we haven't had in Tampa since Rich McKay?
Yeah, pretty much. And you're right. Every draft is important, but this one is going to be very important because you're going to have to expect these players to come in and be starters right away. Will they do that? We shall see. But I think anytime you have a Jameis Winston, I know I sound like the ultimate homer, you have a chance to win. I mean, for me, I think the Buccaneers got the most important position taken care of, and that's Winston. And if you read some of the comments that Dirk Koetter and the new offensive coordinator are saying that they want to be more explosive, that Mike Evans is going to be in better shape, that Jameis Winston is going to be in better shape, you have to believe that this team is going to be overall better, right? You have to believe that.
Think about this. Mike Evans had a bad season with 1,200 yards.
Yes.
That's scary.
Yeah, but how many drop passes did he have?
But you understand. Right. You understand what I'm saying. This was a bad season for him with all these drops. He still ended up with 1,200 plus yards. That to me is scary.
And you had a quarterback. Yeah, you had a quarterback that threw for over 4,000 yards as a rookie, the third rookie in NFL history. He had a 58% completion percentage. So definitely improvement. They could definitely improve here, and they could get that much better. And then you forget about the forgotten man at this point. We were talking about him a couple months ago leaving here. You got Doug Martin. I mean, you're okay. Yeah. You're going to be okay. The offensive line, I think, is improved with Sweezy at the left guard position. He looks like a road grinder. He looks more athletic than Logan Makins. I think everything's going to be fine here. It's just going to, again, it's going to be a tough schedule. It's tough to see how many wins they're going to have, but let's see how it shakes out. And let's not be so negative as fans out there or as analysts or talking heads that, oh, this is all doom and gloom and they're going to fail and Dirk Koetter is going to be out of here. Let's give it a chance. Let's see what happens. Because, again, you got Jameis Winston. You got some key players coming back and Quan Alexander and Gerald McCoy. I think they're going to be just fine. I think they're going to be a lot better than people think.
And we haven't even talked about the other draft picks like your Ali Marpet and Donovan Smith, players that were thrown into the fire, and they did pretty good.
Pretty good
for rookies. They made rookie mistakes, but at the same time, they continually improved throughout the season. So that, to me, is very exciting. considering how bad the offensive line was the year before. This
Right.
really gives me hope. And the fact that they're bringing in other players to kind of tutor or mentor some of the younger players, I think that Tampa is headed in the right direction. I know I said that throughout the show multiple times, but I really believe that Tampa is headed in the right direction with the moves that they're making. And like I said, if they can get at least 2 or 3 in the draft that are able to contribute, this just keeps on building the foundation to a solid football team that will only get better as time goes on.
Sure. And I think the continuity, that's the most important thing. You're going to have Dirk Cutter back. You're not going to have any offensive changes. Jameis Winston, I think, is going to progressively get better because he's going to have more of the playbook. And again, he's going to be in shape. So we're going to see how this turns out come September. And I can't wait for football season. I'm just getting excited right now. The draft starts in a couple weeks. I'm ready to go. I mean,
Absolutely,
2 weeks from tonight, we're talking about the NFL draft starting. So I'll be there. I'll be watching it. I'll be watching it here at my Bucs apartment. Of course, my Bucs flag in the background. And eating plenty of bad food and hoping that Joey Bosa drops down into the Bucs lap at number 9. I really think this is a possibility. I do.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I won't be mad if they trade down. I won't be mad about it. We're not in need of a franchise quarterback.
Right.
I think that you could do something for even next year. Even you look at the move that Tennessee made. There may be you never know how they package these draft picks or what compensation Tampa will get. But I promise you that it won't be something that will hurt the team. So I kind of want to go back.
Would you be mad if they drafted an offensive tackle at number 9, or they traded down and drafted an offensive tackle like a Ronnie Stanley or Jake Conklin? Because see, I think you already have DeMar Dotson and you already have Gosler Cheerless and you have Donovan Smith at the left tackle. I don't see why you would draft one unless it is the best player on the board and you feel like he's better. I just think the need at defensive line is too relevant at this point to pass up.
Absolutely. And the one thing is getting pressure on the quarterback. That's very important. I've gone back and looked at the game film for Mike Smith when he was in Atlanta. And the one thing that stuck out to me was I don't think he had the level of talent that he on defense that he has here in Tampa.
Didn't.
So he didn't have a Gerald McCoy type player. He didn't have a Levante David and those types of players that he could get out there on a consistent basis. So I think what we're going to see is a more disciplined, if more discipline is a word or a sentence there, we're going to see a more disciplined Tampa Bay Buccaneers team. I think the penalties will not be so much of a factor. And the one thing that I will say is I've seen other teams, top-tier teams, that get a bunch of penalties, but they win. Tampa is not at that point yet, and they need every single yard they can get until they can build up that momentum and start winning games. Only then will the penalties be a non-factor for us. So before we close out the show, I really wanted to go over the schedule just for those viewers who haven't seen the schedule. The first game, September 11th, is going to be the Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta.
When?
So this is going to be at 1 o'clock. So that's going to be a pretty exciting game. The next game will be at Arizona here in Phoenix at 4 o'clock, September 18th. That's going to be another good game. I really feel like both of these games to me are games that if Tampa executes, they can win. I don't think that they're going to get blown out or anything like that. I think if they can go out there and execute and stay to their game plan and limit their different types of problems, then they could actually win this game. 2 games in a row, two road games in a row. That's a pretty brutal start to the NFL season. Then they're at home against the Los Angeles Rams, and they turn around and they're at home against the Denver Broncos. So these are really tough games. Tampa did lose to the Rams last year, so hopefully, like I mentioned before, these are all games that Tampa could come in. If they execute, they can possibly win these games.
2-2.
Yes, yes. So the next week they're on the road again at Carolina. That's
Mm.
going to be a tough game. Super Bowl visitor, Super Bowl runner-up, Carolina Panthers. The next game would be the San Francisco 49ers at San Francisco, and then some really tough games. A team that everybody should not sleep on is the Oakland Raiders on
Absolutely.
October 30th. What they've done in free agency, we're going to see if this works. I think that they're really pushing to start to win games, so that's going to be a really tough game. And then we have the Thursday night football primetime game, the Atlanta Falcons on November 3rd. So that should be a good game for Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans. We're developing a good rivalry with them, and this should be pretty exciting to watch this game. Then on November 13th, we have the Chicago Bears in Tampa. So that's a week 10 game. That looks to be I'm not real sure what Chicago's really done in the offseason. I haven't heard a lot about them. So it remains to be seen what kind of team we're going to see out of them. After that, on the road in Kansas City,
Ooh.
November 20th.
Mm.
And let's hope that it's some kind of warm fall by the time this game rolls around, because I
No,
tell
it's
you
gonna be
what,
cold.
Arrowhead is no joke.
Mm-mm.
And I can tell you, them fans get rowdy and they get loud. And that's going to be a real challenge for Tampa going into Arrowhead and trying to pull out a game there. But once again, these are games that they can, if they can get to Alex Smith and rattle him, who knows? This game is a game that they could possibly win as well. Uh, Week 12, November 27th, Seattle comes to Tampa.
Mm.
That should be a really interesting game right there. I'm really curious to see what the running game is going to look like without Marshawn Lynch, and just see what they do. And I know that, as I mentioned before, they've lost some players in free agency, so we'll get to see this team and see how they do. The next game is at San Diego, Week 13, December 4th, and that's a 4 o'clock game, and that looks to be a pretty interesting game too. You never know what you're going to see with the Phillip Rivers, and we don't know if he's going to be healthy or who the running back is. There's a lot of questions. A lot of time. We're only into April right now, so there's a lot of time between now and December. So you never know what can happen. And then we have the next game would be Week 14 versus New Orleans at Tampa. So that should be a pretty interesting game as well. Now the game that I'm kind of excited about, because I really dislike this team a lot, is the Dallas Cowboys. And you notice both of the teams that I really dislike have the letter D at the first part of their names, Dallas and Denver. They're two of the most rotten but I'm not going to go there. They're just teams I just dislike. And then rubber match, here we got the
Saints again.
exactly on December Christmas Eve. How
Mm.
exciting is that?
Yeah, in New Orleans, Christmas Eve in New Orleans. Hopefully
Yeah,
it's the
that might be a vacation right there.
yeah
There you go.
walking
So the
down the
last
bayou.
Yeah, and the last game of the season, New Year's Day. Hopefully everybody's not hungover. You're looking at the Carolina Panthers.
Depends on
Carolina,
what the record of the Bucks is, right?
exactly. The Carolina Panthers versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And that's a game that I'm really looking forward to. And I mentioned this last week, and I've been mentioning this in the weeks past. Carolina is the measuring stick for how good this team is progressing. Whether you want to believe it or not, they haven't lost a lot of players. They have a general manager who works very well with the head coach. They just continue to get talent, get the most out of talent that people have looked past, and they make the most out of it. So, to see what Tampa does against them this year, I'm really excited about it. So, those are kind of my thoughts right now. I have to kind of rein it all in for now and just waiting to see what happens with the draft. Wait and see what happens with the next free agency period that'll be coming up. to see what Tampa's going to have.
Yeah,
So
and I think the thing for me is the start. You got to get off to a good start. To get off to a 2-2 start, that'd be okay. If you get off to a 0-4, a 1-3 start, that'd be tough because again, there's some tough games in there. And then New Orleans in November, you're playing them. Right, actually in December, you're playing them, and then you're playing them again. So you're playing them at home, and then you're playing them on the road. And then that last game against Carolina, who knows, guys? That may be for the division. That may be for a playoff appearance. That may be for nothing. Hopefully, it's for the earlier. Hopefully, it is for the division, or hopefully, it is for a playoff spot.
And just think about this. Last year, towards the end of the season, Tampa's name was being mentioned as a playoff contender.
I know.
Think about that.
Yeah.
And to me, that just gives me hope that, this team can really do something. If all the players can stay healthy and they can continue to improve, I really think that this team can do something. They can make some noise. They are going to be a problem for a lot of teams next year. I promise you that.
Sure, absolutely. And I think what's encouraging the fans to see is the fact that they do have two nationally televised games against the Carolina Panthers on the road for Monday Night Football, and the Thursday night game versus Atlanta. And I expect more nationally televised games because of Jameis Winston, and because this team, I believe, progressively will get better throughout the years.
Yeah, considering, you have Jay-Z coming to $1 place. I mean, that speaks volumes right there.
Right there, yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap the show up. That was the main things I wanted to talk about. And next week, we'll talk a little bit more about the draft. And I'm sure there'll be some other things that will have developed there by this time, considering how Tennessee and the Rams got the ball rolling for this draft season. So I'm really excited about that. And I want to take a chance to talk about one of the people that really watch the podcast. And it goes by rarely even. Always comments after our show, and always has something to say. Sometimes we don't see eye to eye, but the fact that rarely even always comments, and I may not agree with what he says, but what makes it awesome is he's a fan, and that's what's most important, is fans voicing their opinion, not putting them down. Yeah, exactly. Not getting mad at somebody because I don't agree with them. It's really sad in the social media world where people always have to be right. I'm wrong a lot of times, but I always welcome opinions. I always will, whether I like them or not, agree with them or not. Leave me a comment or whatever. I will be more than happy to respond to it. And I really wanted to shout out somebody else. Real Talk Perez has been really doing a good job repping my show, and I wanted to take a chance to rep his show because he does a real good job. He reps the Buccaneers in the California area, and he does a really good job, and he holds it down. He may get heat from some of the other division rivals, but he holds his own. And thank you, Joe Riolano, Carolina Panther. Hate your team, but hey, you're a great person, man. Thank you for shouting out the show, and I'm really excited. Hopefully, we'll all be able to get on again. I want to get Joe on with you. Real great football mind, and we just have to look past his team.
And Rick Brown too. Can't forget Rick Brown.
No, we can't forget Rick Brown. So I think is very important. Congratulations to the Golden State Warriors. 73 wins, big deal. That is a huge deal. Kobe Bryant, it's hard to believe this is the last time we'll see him on a court. 61 points, amazing. Just so many monumental things going on this week in the sports world, and they're positive things. And they really overshadow a lot of the negative, and that's what makes sports great, because you don't get depressed by a lot of the things that are going on, whether it's politics, whether it's world events or current events. You can always fall back on sports, and that's the common ground that we all have, and that's what keeps us sane, I'm guessing.
Well, speaking of sane or insane, we got to do this flag segment. Who am I throwing the yellow flag against this week? It's not Johnny Manziel, believe it or not. Supposedly he was involved in another hit and run some type of altercation in LA. It's actually possibly his roommate and Josh Gordon, who can't seem to stop smoking weed. I just don't understand it. The guy's got all the talent in the world. He's got an opportunity to come back in the NFL, but what does the guy do? He smokes it all away. The yellow flag this week goes to wide receiver, most likely a former NFL player, and Josh Gordon.
Yes. And you know what? I can't argue that. For me, it's a boxer, Adrian Broner. Adrian Broner he cannot get out of his own way. To me, he's the Cat Williams of boxing, where he's forever getting into something. I mean, this guy could be a multimillionaire. And what really frustrates me about him is he's talented, but he doesn't hone his craft. He's not trying to get better. So that's my guy. That's the guy that, you know what, I would like to bring him out of the boxing ring, put him on the football field so I could throw a flag. But anyway, Peter, thank you so much for being on the show. I enjoyed doing this. This was a lot of fun. We talked a little bit about the draft, talked a little bit about the schedule. Tell everybody about the Sports Web on Tan Talk Radio, a great show in the Bay Area, people. If you get a chance to check it out, please call in. You can get your own intro music. Believe it or not, he will cue your intro music if you call in on a regular basis, and he gets to know who you are. He will have your music ready for you. You can call into the show, talk sports. They talk Rays. They talk Tampa Bay Lightning. Congrats to the Lightning, by the way. And you know, all the Tampa Bay sports that, you know, are relevant. You know, you can talk about that on the Sports Web. It's a show for fans, and you don't have to worry about being put down or criticized or hung up on. You can get your point out there. So, Pete, that's your promo, buddy.
Absolutely. The Sports Web on Saturday afternoons at WTAN, 1340 a.m. from 4 to 5. If you're listening online, tantalk1340.com. Again, you know, it's a fan show. We ask you to bring your passion, bring your excitement. Just don't bring any nonsense. Don't spew that nonsense like some people do, like Sean the Sports Don does sometimes. But yeah, our show is different because we give the fan a voice and we give the fans an opportunity to be a star. They're the star of the show. We give them their own walk-up music. That's what separates the Sports Web from every other sports talk show in the Tampa Bay area. And again, in 2 weeks, on that Saturday, right before the draft, actually, I believe it's 1 week from now. 1 week from now, excuse me. 1 week, we go 2 hours in celebrating the 1-year anniversary for the Sports Web. And also, we are going to be talking NFL draft, Buccaneers, getting your thoughts on that. We'll probably most likely have Mr. ESPN himself, Rick Brown, and also a new contributor, Rich Herrera, the former post-game host of the Tampa Bay Rays, will most likely be joining us that day also to talk baseball. So we got everything for you. We got football, we got baseball, we got hockey, and of course we got basketball, because if I don't talk basketball, Sean the Sports Don is going to try to kick me off the show. Of course, I'm the host. He's the co-host. I'm Peter Blake, giving you something to think about.
All right, folks, and thanks a lot for checking us out. Like I said, give us some likes, subscribe to the show. If I can get any of your questions, I'll get them on here. Thanks for everybody checking it out, and have a good night.